and welcome to Dregs of Wisdom with Andrew Tanner.
Hey, we're here, Dregs of Wisdom, episode 22. We have kicked things back off after taking a hiatus from the Berkshire Yoga Festival, and my guest this week is Jai Sugrim, who is a friend that I've met along the journey, along the path of yoga. We first met, I believe, at the Dharma Yoga Shala or Dharma Yoga Center in New York City back in the early 2000s. We also practiced together at Jivamukti, or I took class with him at Jivamukti. And then we kind of intersected in different ways. And we met back up last year and we have rekindled a friendship. It's such a cool thing to meet a friend on the path. And Jai, I'm so excited to have you here. Thank you for coming. And you are in the middle of a lot of transitions right now. Maybe just share, if you could, a little bit about, you just opened a yoga studio. You've done everything from being a trainer for the New York Yankees to teaching yoga and working with clients. Jai has a huge focus on longevity, but you decided to open a yoga studio on top of everything else you're doing. Tell us kind of what prompted that. And, so many people let go of their studios during the pandemic. Why are you bringing it back?
It's good to be here with you, Andrew. It's great to talk about weaving in and out and reconnecting and the mode you were in, pulling it all together at the Berkshire Yoga Festival. It brought something out very beautiful in me to be back out of my shell. The pandemic put me in a bit of a shell and closed off. Just before the pandemic, I had been a traveling teacher on tour, blowing it out all over the world, traveling with just a suitcase and a laptop and being light and on that energy of lightness. And when you open a yoga center, it's like a real enmeshment, a real engagement with the world and with the lives of the members of your community. And so what shifted for me is during that lockdown, I was forced to root in one place. And I like constant movement and constant change. And at the earlier stages of life, not having a lot of belongings, it suits the path of exploration that yoga calls out of us, not having a property, being sort of non-attached. And when you open a center, it's like you deal with a lot of expenses, it's very worldly to an extent. It draws you down into the world. So for me, I started to look over my shoulder at kind of what have I not done yet? I've had a yoga TV show. I've trained a professional sports team. You've done something that I want to do, which I'm waiting till 50 to get smarter and a little more mature to do, which is write a yoga book. So I hadn't opened a studio. I haven't had my own shala. I trained with people who, my teachers like Eddie Stern, who I spent a decade with, always lived above his shala or below. So he would wake up in his place, bathe, do practice, and turn right around and teach. And that's something I admire. I admire how for a decade of life where I was changing and transforming and trading in one way of looking at the world for another way. Ashtanga yoga is silent. You go in, people are breathing, but your teacher's there, and your teacher's there every day. And I wanted to, as I turned 50, I just wanted to not necessarily, I wanted to be the mirror that he was for me and that my teachers, Sharon and David, were for me. And so someone that they can come to 3 times a week, who's got a place, it's immaculately kept, it's beautiful, it's serene, it's zen, it's a place where your practice can reflect back to you what you need to see as your karma is unfolding. And the intention is to do it with my partner as a family and to create good vibes. It was also spurred by the idea that I was thinking at one point of giving up being a yoga teacher because I had come so far with it. And I was like, no, what are the incarnations? Like, how can you do this? Certainly, I do not have the energy to go back on tour and get out of the airport in Barcelona and take a taxi and live in an Airbnb for 3 days, then fly to Switzerland in 2 more days, take a rest, teach 3 days in Basel, then go on the train to Thun. Like, I certainly didn't have the energy for that. And I was like, yeah, it's a shala. It's got to be a yoga shala, a cool place. And I became attracted to like the salmon swimming upstream, to coming back to my roots. I'm an upstate country boy. And I was always attracted to New York because people are around every corner interested in yoga and longevity and fitness and prevention. And I always thought that would be hard to sell upstate. And I was totally wrong. Living up here the past 5 years, people, it's a big expat community. There's much more money, much more of an economy, much more of an upward moving energy. And so I made a very nice niche for myself and ended up creating a terrific community of people. I felt like what the most beautiful part of transitioning back upstate away from Manhattan has been that I haven't had to compromise the way I teach. I didn't have to water down the teaching in one bit, not anyway. And it's been well received. And as I got older, like when you and I were practicing at Jivamukti, I taught advanced level asana. People could come in there and have a pose where the leg went over their head. And as I got older, I realized I was losing my interest in that, and the demographic in my room was changing. And I actually wanted to share the teachings of Vedanta with my students, which were my meditations. And the older population, they take to that. They're people who have been to a funeral. There are people who have lost a child. There are people who have healed from cancer. And when you speak about the spiritual teachings and meditation, they take to it. And when we're at a younger, more rajasic stage of life, we were more social. We want to conquer the body. We want to master the first and second and third series of asanas. But when you're older, it's like you're more tempered. You're more open-minded. You've got all this experience through which to filter spirituality through. So the shala came as a thing. Like when I spoke to our mutual friend, Leslie Kamenoff, he's like, yeah, you're not going to get rich doing that. And it's obvious, right? The margins aren't incredible, but you can make a good living if you're very good at it and your community does support you. So it's something I felt compelled to do, whether it succeeds or not. So far, it's been successful in the first month, but it's something I felt driven to do because it's the one aspect besides writing the book of yoga teaching that I haven't yet.
Well, then I have two points on that. One, I mean, first of all, I think it's great that you're taking up the mantle. Like you said, Eddie Stern and all these great teachers, Dharma Mitra, all the people that we studied with, Sharon and David, they're retired or semi-retired or should be retired, or they're kind of like someone, they're going to have to pass it on the torch. You know, I have this joke that, you know, as a yoga teacher, eventually you'll go into prana pause. That's where like you just don't have the Shakti anymore, and you have a lot of wisdom perchance, but I think that there's this sweet time in the 40s, 50s, 60s that's like the prime for a yoga teacher, especially if like they have a 20-year practice prior to that, right? They didn't start yoga in their 40s or 50s or whatnot. So I think it's awesome that you're doing that. And I think the other thing, we did the podcast last week with the Sabal Foundation. And the founder of the Sabal Foundation is this guy he's a doctor. He was trained in America, but he went back to Nepal, and he's an Indian doctor, but he went to Nepal to work with people who are like he could have had an easier life. He could have been a doctor in the States and made good money or whatever. He chose instead to work with people who are untouchables, basically. And instead of the money, it's like you're being paid with something else. There's a richness to it. And I sense you seeking the richness that comes from taking care of a shala, from being the guide, the mentor, the light that Eddie was for you, for others. So I think I just want to say, I really want to support that and support you in making that business work, which comes to your book, because I think every yoga teacher who's been teaching for 25 years or anyone that has something to say should write a book. It helps you clarify your ideas. What would your book be about? And will you get into please, I hope it's about longevity.
It has to be called, or at some point I have to write The Art of Aging Mindfully.
Right.
That is a must. But I think there's also a story about, like, I read Brian Kest's book and The Autobiography of an American Yogi. And I read it in a day and a half. Like, I just couldn't put it down. He was just so honest and so raw. And big props to Brian for as crazy as he was about his body and his 3-hour classes and this and that. The guy did 20 Vipassana meditations. Like, that's real. That's real sadhana. That takes all the hot air out of the room and flushes it out. It's just he sat with his crap for 20 silent retreats, and he talks about the drama. One great thing he didn't do is he didn't out anyone by name. I knew who he was talking about. Like, he referenced my teachers about the vegan trip and stuff like that, and how funny some of it is. And he didn't call out anyone in a mean-spirited way, but it was an honest book, and I admired the honesty. This path is like, if I write an autobiography, it would be very, very crazy, like Brian's, because I've had 3 whole frickin' worlds with the curtains pulled right back behind the world of finance, pro sports, and Hollywood, because I was inside of those worlds as a celebrity trainer, massage therapist, yoga teacher. So I understand exactly what the guys that are the top billionaires of Wall Street. I know what they think like. I know what an Academy Award winning movie maker thinks like. I've walked by the Academy Award for a decade, going up to see Martin Scorsese in his office. And I know the yoga world inside and out, with all the theatrics, all the shenanigans, all the repressed sexuality, all the expressed sexuality, all of it inside and out of these worlds. I would write a fun book and just leave it as the summation of like this thing about getting to 50 is, I remember when I was young, okay, this is going to tie into 50. I used to practice Jeet Kune Do, the way of the intercepting fist, Bruce Lee's martial art. Mm-hmm. And on the dojo, the wall was a phrase by Bruce Lee that they translated on a plaque. And it said, "Mastery is the trimming away of the unessentials." And I didn't understand it in my early 20s. I was like, what the hell does that mean? And it was a riddle. I kept looking at it, and it became etched on my neocortex. And in my 40s, it started to make sense. When we become 40, we experience cellular senescence. We can't process toxins anymore. We can't process things like alcohol anymore. We have...
Wait, so cellular senescence, just to clarify, I thought, is that when certain cells don't work anymore?
They don't work, but they don't work. They don't do their job, and they stick around, but they still produce waste, so they produce a lot of inflammation, but they're defunct.
So senescent cells are what we eat up when we do fasting, right?
100%. They get crushed during the fast, especially like your stuff with the dry fasting is... definitely gets in there fat,
Just to be clear, I've only done dry fasting twice now. I'm still only recommending water fasting for my clients and stuff.
Yeah. So this phrase, Andrew, is deep because, the changes to the body. 50, you've been practicing yoga for a long time. I've been practicing yoga for a long time. So how many life addictions do you want to carry to the second half, right? You know your patterns at this point. And the trimming away of the unessentials to make the master, it's a process of letting go. And so 50, the psychology of opening the shala is, when you challenged me last time, Lucas Rockwood said in his book, when we spoke 2 weeks ago, I mentioned Lucas saying, oh, it's borderline unethical to teach spirituality. And you're like, no, you push back. You're like, Jai, you are that teacher. You've done the requisite sadhana. You've put in the time. You must hold yourself in the light as you are giving a spiritual teaching. You're not higher, holier than thou, but you're basically telling me to take the reins, man. Take the reins, right? So 50
be a leader. The world is asking for leaders.
Just be a leader.
Yeah.
But by example.
But not a despot,
I'm so terrified of these guru scandals. There's been so many of them. So I'm really cautious about the professional structures around what I do. Because it gets so strange. It gets so strange with people, with what they offer you, with agreements. And one of the things I've learned early, I've worked one-on-one with clients since I'm 20 years old. And I was schooled by other professionals who pulled me aside and gave me the rules. They're like, this is how this thing works. And so one of that is to be really clear about the nature of your agreements. But we've all seen in the yoga world tons of murky agreements between the student and teacher.
So I don't want to, this was so many threads are opening up. I want to bring us back. Do you think you want to write a tell-all autobiography, or do you want to write about how to heal, during this time, like your longevity protocols?
Both, but
I think it's 2 books, because it sounds like
the first one is the scientific experience. Like, I don't know any other yoga teachers with my experience that have had there has to be, I haven't met them. There has to be someone who's a CSCS, a certified strength and conditioning specialist, and like practiced in these lineages of authentic yoga. But the fact is, my mind works in terms of like, okay, how many hours do you have to give to your health and longevity plan? 6 hours? I can tell you how to break that down minute by minute, half hour by half hour, to program it to get a specific results. That's a separate book. That's a how to extend
Is that
your
what
life
you do?
book.
Is that what you do with clients right now?
Yeah.
Like, wow.
Yeah. So that's a separate thing. But this other one is, there's a side of me that's an artist and an adventurer. My life metaphor is, my first tattoo on my arm is, life is a daring adventure or nothing at all, or life without romance is meaningless. The word is romantic. It means adventure or romance. So that book is going to come out, but I don't want it to be, juvenile or immature, which is why, like, crossing the gate of 50 is when I'll tackle that project, because it is a massive adventure.
Which one? Your life story.
The life story
is the first 50 years.
I came here at 8 years old. My mom and dad came here with $28. We started from nothing. It's to being a guy that Yogi Berra presents a World Series ring to then
tell us that story. Like, give us one good Yankee story. What is there a story from that time you haven't told? Or
there's a million things, like, the old timers from the 50s love nudity. They'll stand there and talk to you for
naked
20 minutes, butt naked. Like,
yeah.
They'll walk right in front of the reporters naked. The players, Andrew, I got that ring. I didn't know I was getting the ring till year 2, because it was a 3-peat ring. And I got the ring because of my attitude and because of my militaristic upbringing. The players at the end of the year, when we make the playoffs, they close the lounge and they vote on who contributed to the success of getting to the playoffs. So if we win the championship, this person gets money. We take all the seats and we divide. No, the team doesn't get the seats. All the tickets that the fans buy go into a pot and we share it. So they vote on who gets a share and who gets the ring. and it's by vote. And so I'm like, oh, I'm a rookie. I'm really young. I'm not.
And
you,
just to be clear, you were the massage therapist or one of the massage therapists. I was an assistant
trainer and massage therapist. So I would not get.
Who did you work on the most?
Oh, Mariano Rivera every day, first to the seventh inning. It was an unbelievable experience. Like that guy's mind. This is before I got heavily into yoga. He's a yogi. You know what he told me? I said to him, how in the world do you turn around and throw strikes after your best pitch got hit out of the park and smashed into a home run and now the game's tied? And he looks at me and he goes, ice water in your veins. I go, what? He goes, ice water in your veins. You take one breath, you clear your mind, and you turn around and you throw strikes. That's yoga. That's mind control. 58,000 screaming fans, 57 at the old stadium. He never heard it. He said he doesn't hear the screaming. And they're screaming at the top of their lungs.
Are there any baseball players or athletes or people from that time that later did yoga with you? Or that you've reconnected with?
No, massage and like program design and recovery stuff, but not yoga. No.
Got it.
Not the Yankees.
Yeah. But wait. So you were saying, so they voted and they gave you a ring because you were militant? What were you doing?
So the pitchers loved me because pitching is really unnatural. So my work is called spot work on most players. So let's say the game is at 7, right? Or 6. We would come in at 1. The starting pitcher would walk by and say, block out 4 to 5 for me. They get to call the time on the table. So they get a full body massage. Then I know Mariano is from the 1st to the 7th inning, and everybody else will walk by and go, Bernie Williams will go, oh, I was stealing third the other day and I hurt my hamstring. Can you look at it? So he's got 15 minutes. And I mean, I am killing myself to diagnose, treat, and get him out and get the next one in. So that's equivalent to 1 hour of work compressed into 15 minutes.
Oh my God.
And the players picked up on that. They knew how hard I worked and I never said no. And I had 1 day off for the whole season, which in 9 months was the All-Star game. Baseball is an everyday game. Even if there isn't a game on the schedule, there's usually practice and I'm in and I'm working. So I abused my body a little bit. My arms were inflamed. My forearms are humongous to this day from doing that work. These guys are savages. They're huge.
Right.
They're beasts. So they voted. But
I bet you your fingers are also really strong, which I find to be super helpful for yoga.
They're surgical tools. My elbow is like someone else's finger. The olecranon process of my elbow is so sensitive to get into trigger points in the hamstrings, the shoulder blades. So they voted in, and I didn't know I was getting the ring till the second season when the guy from the office came down to measure fingers, and I was like, la-di-da-di-da-di-da, going about my day, and he's like, Sugrim, and I was like, yeah. And he's like, he measured my finger, and I tried to keep a cool head. I was like, what? They vote. I get a ring. I get the 26th ring with my name on it. I couldn't believe, and I went into the massage room and I probably did 2 backflips. I was like, it's because you're part of history. Andrew, players go into the Hall of Fame without a ring because they were never on a championship team. There are so many people who play the game, and here I am. Like, it couldn't be any more of a storybook. I mean, and that's why the book is going to be interesting, because it's not something I sought out. It was something I had the right attitude, I had the right karma, I had the right work ethic. I am a professional, and it just fell on me to where here I am 10 years ago at age 15, I'm trading baseball cards of these guys I'm now working on. That's how freaking wacky
so
that
you
is.
were 25 at that time.
26 and 27.
And then why did you decide to leave that? I imagine it must take a toll, but when did you go shift from that to yoga?
Right around, so I'll explain it. I have dreams, okay, of my own, things I want to explore. I'm an artist. I'm a very creative person. And I took a break from the theater. I knew Roger Clemens's trainer, and he said, "Hey, I know you're a lights out body worker. I've had your work. They need someone for spring training. Would you come do an internship with the team?" And I was like, my clients were all like, "You're out of your mind if you don't go. It's the New York Yankees. Go." So that was my in. So from spring training, this job got created. Normally you go to A ball, double A ball, triple A ball, then you get called up to the bigs. But massage therapy wasn't on every sports team yet. So in spring training, the pitchers turned to Steinbrenner and said, "This guy's amazing. Can he work home games?" 6 weeks later, everyone on the team goes, "This guy's amazing. Can he travel with us full time?" So they literally created a position for me based on my skill set. It was not anything like an interview. It wasn't like, it was just, again, having the right attitude, being in the right place. And it happened to be my favorite team.
It's like you're the dynasty. Oh my God. Like this is like insane. Were you beyond? I mean,
I had to pinch myself every day I went to work that I wasn't going to watch the baseball game. I was going through the tunnel and into the clubhouse and eating with these guys, traveling with them, showering with them, spending times at the hotel, going to the movies with them. Like, it was sick. It was ridiculous. And I tried to keep a cool head, but I never took it for granted. So why did I leave is I did the math and I rolled the dice. I said, this is a three-peat. Somehow I've had the karma to win and get a ring. And the only way you make, Andrew, killer money is if you win the World Series. And some of the guys give you fat checks for tips. Guys will rip off a nice check to you and hand it to you for doing a good job, but it doesn't really pay.
But they don't pay well. They don't they're like, "We love you. We want you to work like a slave." It's kind of like you did your time in a cult too, then, I guess.
Yes. So I've had several cult experiences. We can get into that later. But anyway, I felt that I was trailing behind stars, and in a way, on the cleanup crew, I love my position. I love massage. To this day, I do it out of a treat, never to make money. I do it to blow people's minds and help them heal. Okay, so I still love the craft and the art, but I didn't want to throw my 20s, all of my youth away. I looked at Gene Monahan and Steve Donahue, and there were guys with huge guts, poor health, yet they were the two head trainers of the team. And they were eating shit food on the road all the time, living out of a suitcase away from their families. I looked at that path and I go, maybe I should get back into theater, having scooped up this ring and done the best. And if this team doesn't win again, I will have played my cards right. And I was right.
Maybe they didn't win because you left. You might have been the secret. About that.
Good luck charm. But So that was the reason I wanted to go back to I didn't want to sacrifice my creativity and wind up like Gene and Steve, which is taking care of stars and sacrificing their health and living on the road is fun for the first go around. And the third time you go to Oakland and stay in San Francisco and you're in a hotel for 3, then you have a 21 game road trip. It's not that thrilling. It's kind of a pain in the neck. It's exhausting to live on the road.
I think you're tapping into something very important this relates to everyone. It's so easy to get caught up in a job or a lifestyle that on the outside, everyone's applauding or looks great or there's advantages to it. There might be money. For others, it could be money. It could be status. It could be what people think of you, what your parents think of you. The common denominator I see in people that really live a life worth living is that they're willing to give up that to pursue the next thing. Like, they're willing to have the faith in themselves and I don't know if you see that little board behind me. Do you see this?
Yes.
It translates to walk to the edge of the mountain, look down at the precipice, take one more step. Like, that willingness, you know, to have something that everyone says is amazing and to let it go because it's not like, you know, that you could get something, there's something better for you. There's something that you can control yourself. I always want that teaching to be shared more with people. Like anyone listening to this, like that is the, you know, Jai has an amazing life. I feel like we're barely scratching the surface with you, but I think that's just an example of you making the choice.
Well, I have to backtrack just to my senior year to someone that's influenced this thinking. And I have to give credit to a University of Chicago professor named Mikhail Csikszentmihalyi. And his work, he's the grandfather of flow.
Positive psychology, right?
Yes. Stephen Kotler has taken this work further, and the Flow Genome Project has taken it further. But he's the grandfather. He's the first one who started studying flow states. And it heavily, heavily influenced me. And I said, did I claw my way out of the third world? I looked at the trajectory of lives of doing a job for money and then retiring at a certain age and eating at Denny's and living in Florida. Like it just never made any sense. And his work propelled me and gave me the courage to realize, hey, I'm on the path to obesity. I'm on the path. I had huge connects. Andrew, to every game, I had 5 seats to home plate. I would network like crazy. I could go to any place and be like, yeah, I can put your name on will call for 5 tickets tomorrow. I utilize that to do a lot of connecting the dots with people. It's prestigious, but I always went back to, it's my life. I'm going to die. And I've got to explore my heart, what's in my heart. And that's been when the shala is coming from my heart. It's right back to like, I'm a big Indian brain guy. I can do anything, but that's where my heart is. My heart. So Csikszentmihalyi's work was about ultimate happiness and the adventure of your own life, and what he correlated happiness with spending your time doing things you love. The more time you spend connect to things you love. People do work so they can then free up some time later in the future to do what they love. And I thought the Yankee thing, because I didn't seek it and it found me, that it was a beautiful gift. I had reached the top and the pinnacle in my field, that it was time to move on and to live my life and go back to this masterful theater teacher, Thurman E. Scott, who had a lot of wisdom and metaphysics behind his teaching. He opened up things in me.
So you were doing, in your early 20s, like you went to U Chicago, it sounds like, and then...
No, I went to St. John's in Queens, but I was reading Csikszentmihalyi's papers.
Okay.
I was coming across that stuff and eating it up, and then I had his first 2 books.
Right. That whole psychology, positive psychology, I know, I remember that book when it came out.
Yeah.
So that was driving you. And were you studying theater in college, or did you then pursue the theater? And
I was an English lit major. I was in theater. I studied theater after college. And I was in the scene a little bit in New York. I never excelled professionally, but I enjoyed studying the craft. And I could see the skill sets, the voice training, the body language, the expression has translated into some of my success. The NLP stuff, all of that has helped me when I'm channeling a Vedantic teaching. That skill set comes from Thurman E. Scott. I have to give him credit for his training my voice.
I mean, for yoga teachers out there, especially younger ones that may be listening to this, like the common thread among so many of the successful, like the yoga teachers that really do, you know, make a big living doing yoga, is that they have a theater background, myself included.
Yeah.
And the skills of public speaking, voice reciprocity, all the body awareness, all that stuff, it just is so helpful. It should almost be like pre-training for yoga teacher training.
100%.
You know, but so, okay. So then you went, what bodywork school or what massage therapy school did you go to? If you were, you know,
went
you
to the
took
Finger
right to it.
Lakes, Finger Lakes School of Massage in Ithaca.
Did you have an amazing mentor, or why do you think, are you naturally gifted in that? What do you think was
well, our father is a military man, and he's really psycho about discipline. So he, like my dad, we lived in Queens for a while, and I would get into fist fights, listen to rap music, and play basketball. He didn't like any of that stuff. And like, it was so abrupt. One day he's like, we're moving to the country. And it was like a week later, I was milking a cow, living on 36 acres, going through puberty, couldn't get the smell off my hands, trying to talk to girls, and just like waking up at 4:30 in the morning, running 4 miles, doing chores. My dad is so into athletics and push-ups and pull-ups, and he taught us how to do massage on each other's legs. So
really?
So it's part of our culture, and in our culture,
right.
Indian babies are massaged.
Can you talk about that a little? Like in Indian culture, like massaging the feet of the guru, like massaging your parents' feet.
Yes, I used to massage my grandmother, her feet. We all have learned to massage the feet and legs of our grandmother. So it's touch is part. Babies, they have done studies on babies that are not touched in orphanages or that don't have their parents proximal to them. They grow up a little malformed, malnourished. So it's a type of food. It's think about it. When you crawled and you reached up and touched a doorknob, you made a memory that, oh, doors have these structures that if I turn, I can go through them. You map the world and the territory around you. It's very tactile. And kinesthetic was one of your first primary modes of learning, to touch. And so for Indians, they touch their children. They bow to each other. They are very, like, I was shocked the way American kids spoke to their parents, like calling them their first name or being able to curse in front of their parents. I was like, that is crazy. That would never fly at home. Like, you know, so my dad taught us how to massage. We're 4 kids, how to massage each other's legs because we were runners. We had to do track and cross country in the fall, track in the spring was a must. Then in the winter, I played basketball. So that was my first real experience with it. And I had a mentor who worked on Olympic decathletes, and he trained me to do that work that I told you called spot work, which is how to diagnose, treat, and get them out the door in 15, 20 minutes, like how to work to stimulate a tissue and to get an adhesion, like what bungles up on the body. And this is such a long, separate episode, but with body work, you have to understand fascia and the connective tissue, which is, there's emotions that trap into those structures, but the fascia needs to release. And he taught me how to work on a technical, proficient level. And he was an athlete in himself. So I worked on him and got feedback from him. So when I ended up getting that internship with the Yankees, my work was so lights out that they were performing better. That the Yankees actually, it's the players that created my position. If it weren't for them, I don't think I would have had that job in a linear way at all. It was an accidental job.
So with the spot work, well, 2 parts to this question. One, did you talk to Leslie Kam? Just quick answer. Did you talk to Leslie Kaminoff about this and about his theories on all this? Because, you know, he's like an amazing body worker.
Leslie's an autodidact. He kind of learned from mentors. We touched on it a little bit, but we didn't get into fascia. We talked for 2 hours. I feel like I could talk to Leslie 10 more times for an additional 2 hours each because he's so knowledgeable. Yeah. I would love to just focus on bodywork because I feel I have this deep, rare level of experience. when I wrote him in the email, I'm like, Leslie, I've touched 20,000 bodies therapeutically. He's like, yeah, I've touched 30,000 therapeutically. I was like, okay, all right. Yeah, you are further along in the journey than me, but I get it.
He's older. He's older.
He's older. But I mean, the point was, when you are at that level, it's no longer, there's an internal algorithm that the hands know. Right. And that like you're so clinically trained that if you use your clinical training alone, it'll sidetrack you. You have to blend in the feedback
go
from
to
all
intuition.
The other parts. It's intuition mixed with clinical expertise. And it's 50-50 that leads you into the place. Like, yes, there's a protocol for something that's a strained hamstring. There's a way to test to find which muscle it is. But then the hands will lead you to the exact spot that's pay dirt by being able to sense the inflammatory response and sense the feedback the client is giving you.
I mean, given the idea of fascia, do you see the whole body as like a tensile structure where, and what I mean by that is, your foot is connected to your shoulder, and that you might have the pain in your shoulder, but where it's going back to could be almost anywhere. Or is there are there rules to it in your opinion?
100%. It's like, you see medieval male, the image of a medieval MAIL, or like the
like the Da Vinci?
No. Male is like a metal shirt you wear when you're jousting. It's like
male, like a chain mail.
Yeah. Gotcha. So it's like in every cell of the body, it's a matrix spread out. What I'm exploring right now in my work is the relationship between diaphragmatic breathing, the psoas, and the toes as eyes. So thinking of the psoas.
That's awesome. Say that again. Hold on, please. One more time.
So the psoas are actually a respiratory muscle. There's a ligament that connects the psoas to the diaphragm.
Right.
So, and the right diaphragm is bigger than the left diaphragm, which causes all of these asymmetries to develop on the right rib cage. It's just how
because of the liver being bigger than the stomach. Why is that?
It's the way, I don't know. It's the way we're born, the way they're all shaped. And the right side is out of balance. So in malasana, I'll sometimes have someone go into a malasana with the round. So we have been trained as yogis to stretch the psoas. And I'm beginning to think it's not about stretching. It's about engagement
releasing.
And release.
Yeah.
And so...
let's talk about this. Number one, how would you quote unquote stretch the psoas? And then number two, how would you engage and release it?
I think the release is with the breath, and engaging is like Utthita Hasta C, where you're standing on one leg with the right leg, standing on your left leg with the right leg straight forward, holding your waist. That's how you would engage and get it to fire if it's asleep. My right one has been asleep, and I'm dealing with a lot of fascial networks that need repatterning right now.
So you may be interested in the work of Sarah Joy Marsh, who she does this she has a trauma-informed brain-based yoga. She's been teaching in prisons for years. She taught me a routine for releasing the psoas, and I do it almost all the time in my classes now. And you do Utthita, but you do it lying down on your back.
Oh, okay.
So when you're lying down on your back, you'd start with just pulling your leg into a class. Sorry, I gotta keep my mouth near the mic. You'd start by pulling your leg up into just a basic hamstring stretch. Then you'd go out to sea, out to the side. Then you'd sweep it up and across the other side of your body. You hold each one for about 60 to 90 seconds. Mm-hmm. And then when you release your leg down to the floor, that side will feel so much longer than the other side. And it's, according to Sarah Joy Marsh, it's because the psoas has been released. So it's like engaging and then releasing. but somehow that does make it longer, but not by stretching it.
Yeah,
it's I don't know if that's what do you think of that,
man. It's just a bedrock of emotions, like bringing your vagus tone down if you're overstimulated. Like, I'm just exploring different, like, when you're getting into 50, what becomes, and you're interested in longevity, what becomes really important is your capacity to self-regulate and process stress. That is at the top of the list, along with, we can talk all day about biohacking, but the longevity protocols, like simple stuff, simple yogic stuff, like mastering rest and sleep. Like,
but do you think that will affect the Psoas? Like,
yes,
you said a sentence earlier. Yeah, explain how that stuff affects the Psoas, and then also the sentence you said to start this query was like, it blew my mind. You said the connection between your diaphragm, your breathing,
psoas and the diaphragm. To think of the psoas as a respiratory muscle because it's connected to your diaphragm. And
but then how do you go to the toes? Yeah,
the toes. It can throw if your pelvis tilts anteriorly, and you're leading with the pelvis. You stop rolling from heel to your feet, so you can lose the connection to your feet can become numb. Our feet are very distorted from the shoes we wear. There's nothing remotely natural about the shoes people are wearing. And a lot of the healing, the work I do, I have 2 classes a week that are long. And what I spend the beginning of those classes working on is creating heat so the fascia can slide. The fascia, as we age, is less cooperative, it's less hydrated, and it no longer slides on the muscles of the hips and the shoulders. Though that's an area where muscles are on top of each other and there's friction as they slide. They get really sticky and they're bound by adhesions, which I think as a body worker are life's traumas. That's what the adhesions. Yes, they're waste. Yes, there's a component to where they're made of uric acid, lactic acid, pneumonia, waste products of respiration, but they're also physical injuries and emotional injuries. And so the feet are bungled up in white fiber and they've been mashed together for decades. And Andrew, your feet prevent you from falling over. They sense, they map the territory.
You're speaking my love language. Like, feet
they're
are the
like
most
your eyes.
Yeah.
They're like your eyes.
And they're so, man, I have clients of all ages, but on how emphasizing to people how important the feet are, the younger you are, the better, because
saves them.
The older people get, their feet really, you can look at their feet and
they're not going to cooperate
so much. Yeah. Right. So, but I've seen a lot of repairing of the feet. Do you recommend like zero shoes or shoes with no sole, or how do you help people like heal the feet?
I think zero shoes are great. Wearing like water shoes, walking around as barefoot as much as possible. I have exercises. Have you heard of like block therapy?
No, what's that?
You
like to spread the toes
and then spread the fingers into the toes and squeeze and breathe 10 times and manipulate the fascia. Like some of my yoga classes start like with a lot of like 10, 15 minutes of working on your feet. Yeah, exactly.
This is a Taoist yoga longevity practice.
That is in my class.
To put your fingers, for those who can't watch the video, I'm putting one finger between every toe, grabbing the other ankle, and then rolling the ankle. That's
an exercise I do. And I teach. So there's a lot of healing to be done. Your feet are your foundation. If your feet are off, the rib cage, pelvis, skull is off. People are developing a big disease, which is if they put their hand in the back of their neck, C7 is beginning to protrude very much on young people, and people are losing their peripheral vision because of the cell phone. The head is tilted way forward and way down, and we are evolving, but perhaps we're evolving in a negative direction if we could find a way to fix the peripheral vision and the head tilt.
So you've talked, I'll say this, everyone in the longevity world talks about sleep and all this stuff now. You know, they weren't before. Like now it's like everyone understands how important sleep is. But the feet, this is something that not enough people are talking about. But when I talk to someone about longevity and they say how important the feet are, like you are, I'm like, oh, this guy's at the cutting edge. He knows what's real.
He knows what it's healing. It's healing. The feet are a whole world, man.
So, okay. By the way, Jai is going to be teaching an intensive as well as a couple classes at the yoga festival next summer. In your descriptions that you sent me, which aren't public yet, but you talk about, you know, there's a yoga practice, and then you talk about like the supplementary practices.
Yes.
For longevity. What are those? And maybe guide us through your longevity philosophy and the practices that you want to share with the yoga community.
Okay. So I want to start back to the Bruce Lee quote, which is, you know, the doorway to mastery is open. It's open for everyone that's entering the second half of life, meaning you know about samskaras and the imprints from the past, the weight of the past. You are an accumulation of patterns that have crystallized and repeated, and we formed a thing called Andrew, and I refer to Andrew, and I have certain expectations when I meet Andrew that Andrew's going to be a certain way based on this composite of previous patterns and expectations. So you don't have to stay that way in the second half of life. Like, for example, if you want to maintain a high level of practice, there are things you're going to have to do. If you want to maintain, there's a trade-off. Like fitness in past 50s can be counterproductive. For example, if you stand at the marathon finish line, you'll see some guys who will finish the marathon who are 60 years old. They'll finish at 3:30, 3:35, 3:29, which are great times that I ran in my 20s, right? But they look like dog crap. They're keeling over, their bones are broken, they're shuffling. They look like they're 80 years old and They're 60, right? So fitness has to factor in the hard and soft days. Like it's the trimming away. The mastery is you don't have to drink anymore. You don't have to drink any alcohol if you want to. You don't have to smoke any weed if you don't want to. You don't have to eat any sugar. These are extreme positions. I'm not saying that you should do this. I'm saying the door is open to where, like, oh, if you want to...
You could make a choice to make a huge change, is what you're saying.
You can make a huge change to live. And the payoff is an extra decade of health span, not lifespan, health span. This is 10 extra years, the gift you gift yourself, that you can still go hiking with your son and your daughter. That's the gift. You can still ride horses if you ride horses. You can still play basketball at the old man league if you want to play old man league basketball. The trade-offs, the body can no longer process alcohol because of the senescent cells. You're aging. You're not going to get away with what you used to. So you want to tidy up. The psychology is like, to do this stuff, you can do it in approximation, but you don't have to stay the same. You have an experience of, like, you can look when you turn 50, you can say, oh, in my 30s, I was really trying for high status. I was trying to impress girls. I was trying to get the best mate. I was trying to get the most money. I was trying to buy the most stuff. I was trying to have the nicest car, the best house. I was trying to take the next trip. When you look around at where are those people now, it's only a handful of those people that have stayed the course that are still on the journey with you. So you start to peel back into what you should start to get a sense of what matters most and start to make that a priority and do it in successive approximation. Like, I had a really big marijuana addiction and I had to come to terms with it and be like, I love weed, dude. I love it. Fucking great. I've learned so much about asana from weed. It's great for my meditations. It's great for sex. It is it's such an amazing plant. It's amazing.
Thank you. Bum Shiva. Bum Shiva.
Om Namah Shivaya, right? But I had established an unhealthy relationship with the plant that can never be fixed. So I had to go into the mirror and look at, like, are you going to take this with you? Or are you going to come to terms with what you're masking? What is the pain under this addiction that you're getting away from, that you can't possibly sit with to go one day without use? What is it, Jai? And I had to go inside of that as a yogi. My practice called me to go into the darkness of my childhood, of neglect, of pleasure seeking, of escapism, of fantasizing, of sensation addiction, and sit with it and look at it and look at it and eventually transcend it. So 50 is
Did you do that on your own? Like, how did that, was it just came to you where you're like, or was it working with someone, you know?
No, I have a very hard time with therapists. I need to really respect a therapist as a human being. Therapists are very wild and crazy people. And a lot of times they're super out to lunch. I've trained a few, so I kind of know about their world, but I would be open to work. The therapy that I like is neurolinguistic programming, because it's
but you can do that to yourself.
You can reframe things. Okay. Language, the richer your mental map is, the richer your inner language is, the more tools you have in which to frame the outer world. The reason I did this is because I saw an alcoholic enmeshing me in their drama. And I noticed that they were an alcoholic, but in that moment, I noticed their alcoholism. I realized I had the same problem with a different substance. And I started meditating on it and coming to terms with this is something. So
this was a friend or a partner, or?
It was a neighbor.
So it was just like someone in your life.
Someone in my life.
You saw a pattern of addiction in them.
Yes.
And it made you see the pattern in yourself.
I was aware of the pattern, but I got in touch with it intimately and contemplated. My practice brings me to an authenticity within myself. I can't escape. My practice is a mirror, and it's very confrontational. Yoga isn't pleasant for me and isn't always pleasant. I do get a lot of peace and solace from it, but sometimes it's when you stay with it for multi-decades, it beats the living crap out of you because it shows you things you don't want to see or things that are hard to change. And so,
is that like when you do your yoga practice, do you end up having this kind of internal conversation with yourself, or
it's contemplation, meditation?
Contemplation.
Yeah.
I just want to give a quick point about contemplation, because contemplation was something that I didn't really know existed for so long. And I think there are a lot of people that don't contemplate. Instead, they just distract themselves for their entire lives. Do you understand?
Mental gymnastics.
Yeah. I mean, to me, contemplation is having a conversation with the slow, wise voice within you. Or it's sometimes like asking yourself a question that's provocative. What is it like for you, and how is it? And I'm sorry, I'm trying to keep going with your story, but like, it's a big deal to suddenly just break an addiction without any external help.
No, that's deep.
So I'm trying to break it down for people who are listening.
Terence McKenna has a phrase that inspires me. Years ago, I used to listen to a lot of Terence's lectures because as an NLP guy, what you do, NLP teaches you how to model someone else's structures and emulate them. So for me, Terence's language patterns are the most artistic language patterns I have ever. He's just honey drips from Terence's mouth. I love Terence McKenna.
I do love Terence McKenna. Although I'm partial to Alan Watts. If we're going to put like a top 5 list of people whose voice to reciprocate.
He's deep. He's deep. But Terence said something, a pattern, a phrase that I isolated into a pattern. He said, to stand naked for inspection before your own psyche.
Mm.
And to me, that's what my yoga practice has always been about. It's not about, because I'm always, as much as I've conquered asana, I've done all the first 2 series. I've put my leg over my head. I've done all the handstands and lotus handstands and everything. I always knew there was going to come a day when they would go away. So it had to be about inspection, standing naked for inspection before my own psyche. Those are all fun games, but I would not be doing this so long if it wasn't about standing naked for inspection before my own psyche. So when I called my neighbor out mentally to Sang, I said, he's a total alcoholic. It reflected back to me. I go, you're a total pothead. And you are dependent on this plant and you're abusing the plant. You're not using it 3 times a week like medicine. You're tapped into this as a dependency. And it was brutal. Dude, I have 3 plants growing that are so dank on my porch right now that smell so fucking gorgeous. It is phenomenal. And I know where they're going. I'm going to give them away to the guy who fixes the house and mows the lawns. Like, he's going to get those plants because I know that the minute I start with it again, it's going to seduce me. It's going to take me into a spiral. And there's going to come a day, 6 months, I'm going to enjoy it. I'm going to use it healthy for 3 months. Then 6 months down the line, I'm going to be like doing a joint at 10 a.m. and going, I don't want to do this. Why am I doing this? I just know that. So I know I can never go back to it. And ironically, here's the funniest part of this. My partner works at the #1 cannabis medical dispensary. She gets shit mailed to her for shits and giggles. She comes home. She goes, try this. It won the festival in Canada last week. Here's the one from the festival in Oregon. And it's like, there's so much weed around. And I remember doing dime bag deals when I was like 30 years old on the Upper West Side, getting into a car, driving around the block.
Buying weed in New York City in the late 90s and early 2000s was really dangerous.
It was dangerous. And
I went to NYU.
Yeah, now it's everywhere. And I can't use it. And I don't use it. But back to that
but it sounds like, yeah, say it again. Say that phrase again.
To stand naked. My practice is about standing naked for inspection before my own psyche. Like, you're turning 50 in a few years. This was when I decided to quit. And I asked myself, do you want to be that teacher who has this dependency? And the answer was no. And so longevity is the trimming away. In the second half of life, mastery opens up so that you can trim away the unessentials. Weed is unessential. Alcohol is unessential. It doesn't make me loosen up at a social gathering. I have a deep enough personality. Why am I still drinking 2 drinks a week? Okay, let's cut that out. Now I have to look at this cookie that Otto's Deli has that's freaking amazing that I don't need at all. It's a chocolate chip cookie that's lights out. So working on these things, not for self-control or to self-improvement is dangerous because it's like self-flagellation. It's like trying, when I improve, I'll love myself. It's just a matter of like being honest as with the samskara. Like, all this is a repeating pattern. Do I want this pattern around? Am I
so at a certain point though, where does it become like, I mean, I'm all for eliminating poisons from life. I didn't drink for a while. I also gave up alcohol for a few years. It was for different reasons. I never had an issue with it really. And same thing with weed. My addiction, my biggest addiction is the smartphone. I think that everyone has an addiction, to something or a coping mechanism of some kind. For me, screens have always been the challenge. My question to you is, at what point though, do we have to give it all up? Do you think that that's part of the path? And to what end? And when you're working with clients, like, are you just trying to get them to make small improvements? Or do you think, for most people, they have to make a big change?
No. This is a great question, Andrew. And I'm going to answer it in a very practical way and then a spiritual way. On a practical level, I understand how I'm wired. I'm a very intense person. I am the most curious human beings alive. Like, I'm propelled. My curiosity got me to give up that great job that I had an esteemed position above any of my peers in my peer group at 26 and 27. But curiosity took me out of it, right? So you have to know how you're wired. That's why I said you don't have to give up alcohol, but if you want 2 drinks, there's a science of how to enjoy alcohol once a week. You drink the 1 beer fast and you sip the second one slow, and you skip breakfast that day and you do cardio the next day, and you'll live a long life and you'll minutely poison your brain.
Right. So you work with clients based on their needs and their personalities.
Their wiring.
Right. And then it's like, so they can have their cake.
Success. No. I deal with the people who run the world. My clients are super successful. When you're controlling billions of dollars, you're wired a certain, you can't unwire that. That's wiring. Like, I am curious. There's no need for me to have a 6-pack at 50, but I'm curious about it. I'm curious enough to take the steps because I think it's interesting. And if it's possible to do it without TRT, I'd like to try to do it because that's how I'm wired. I don't project that on someone else. But if someone's eating and addicted to sugar, I'll tell them that it's a death sentence and that it's a neurotoxin. If someone's drinking 4 or 5 days a week, I'm telling them, you're not going to live a long time without dementia. You're courting Alzheimer's. I'll just call it out. So it depends on, we must learn how we're wired.
So with the drink, so step 1 for your protocols is really realizing that you can make big changes. Like, you don't have to live the next 50 years the way you lived the first 50 years.
That's the spiritual side.
Yep. And then the second part is making some habit changes.
Not really.
Okay.
Not really. There's a step before that I've interjected in the last 5 years.
Okay. Tell us about it.
And then it's going to get to habits, because habits don't change. You can't overhaul all your habits at once.
No.
You can piggyback 2 habits at a time, optimize them, then you stack other habits on top of them.
100% agree with that.
If you try to change a lot of someone's life, you go completely bonkers. It's not sustainable. It'll be great for 2 weeks, then you fall apart.
Yeah.
So there's a step that I've added, which is to not trust your feelings as much as you think you need to. Your feelings are a bunch of nonsense most of the time. To trust your data. So I get all of my clients, day 1, if they come on board, they get a Whoop or an Oura Ring.
Right.
They start collecting as much data on themselves and tracking. I can tell you, I've tracked every heartbeat for the last 4.5 years and every space between every heartbeat. I wake up, I look at my heart. Once I'm finished meditating, I look at my HRV. My resting heart rate will tell me a lot. My resting heart rate should be at 47. If it's in the 50s, I'm not breathing. Respiration rate is off. And I'm in the wrong zone of stress. I'm not managing stress properly. So to look at yourself through the data, I can track behaviors. I can journal to see how my behaviors, like, is bread or milk affecting my sleep? When you start to look at it in terms of data, it takes all the fluff and feel. You can see, we can track every drink, every night you drank for the last 6 months, and look at your sleep score, and it's in the red every single time. So let's look me in the eye and tell me what you'd like to do about your drinking habit. Then it's not a matter of how you feel and Andrew Huberman's latest study. It's a matter of data. This is what you're doing to your sleep and your recovery scores. And you're thinking you're going to go out and run 10 miles and be fit. No, you're throwing yourself further in the red. So to be open to monitoring yourself and starting to objectively study yourself is the first step before changing habits. We can start to integrate like eating well or moving well, but I want you to send me your data. My clients send me their monthly reports. I look at stuff with them, or I'll ask them, how's your HRV been? I know your wife and you have been arguing lately about whether you got out of the city or not, and you're both feeling a little split about it. You know, let's talk about your rest, your patterns. They'll check in. My sessions always start with check-in. Check-in means how you're feeling emotionally, physically, anything you're carrying, but also a little bit about your biometrics. So starting to track yourself objectively is a new thing that's available to us. And we should start to be on the front side of working with these technologies because they're only going to improve. They're only going to get better.
It's funny. This is not where you and I like part ways, but like, yeah. I'm not against technology and data. I think in Taoism, we're really encouraging people to go past the first part of you, which feels just the desire. And there's a deeper part that has an inner wisdom that's actually more connected to your gut versus your heart or your mind. And this is where, again, I think I'm not like against one way or the other, but I think it's like, for me, it's the final step. Or maybe it would be a both and. I mean, I just did a big blood panel myself, with Merrick Health. I don't know if you know them. I did like 38 vials of blood they took and all these biomarkers. So I think getting data is super important. It sounds like you use data. Tell us, I don't know much about like the cutting edge of this. How do you think people should use data about their health? Like what, you've shared a little bit about what you do with clients, but so is it like wearing a heart rate monitor all the time? Like what do you really think the general person should monitor, or someone who's serious about longevity?
To gamify the process, to look at their scores, their recovery, their patterns, and to make it a game. Like when we're talking about the fascial network of the body, I have sat here with you for 90 minutes. I've been sitting in a hip flex position.
Yeah, we should stand up.
So I've already tracked 6,196 steps. So my fascia, my connective tissue, if it stays in this position for most of the day, is a disaster for aging. By the end of the day, I know I woke up, I got one walk in. Before this podcast, I got another walk in. I'm going to get another walk in after the podcast. And then the rest, the incidental, going up the stairs, down the stairs, washing the dishes. I will get to 10,000. It's made a game out of, am I staying active enough throughout the day? This is realistic exercise. I'm not going out and running 10 miles. I'm just tracking my steps. And by making it a game, it's actually preserved my heart. The engine of my body has gotten the workout it needed. And the connective tissue, the fascia, has been in a heated state. It's been in what we call a gel state. If it's in a sol state, those tissues get fixed, the patterns get crystallized. Then you throw your psoas into a constant stress tension response, which throws your hips forward, which then throws your feet off, throws your neck forward. Everything's out of whack. So the data makes it a game. It's like I can see when I ran the marathon last year, I ran the Philadelphia Marathon. I had to get in touch with, I trained like I was still in my 30s. And then I caught myself, I was in the red on the Whoop 8 days
recovery.
In a row. On
like
recovery.
Your sleep.
Red.
Your sleep was shit.
The training I hadn't downloaded that guys in my age group should be going short, long, short, long, short, long. I was doing 10 miles a day. And I always got away with that. And I saw the data, and the data made me adjust. And by looking at the data, my feelings are I'm back to wiring because I'm a very intense person. I'm the kind of guy that pushes through, the kind of guy that doesn't want to be outworked for the position. So he will put in volumes, and I'm masochistic. I can take tons of pain. I can endure, but that's the wrong way to work. At this life stage. That'll put you in the grave super fast. Instead, pulling back and doing less is the discipline that's actually harder for me. And by looking at the data, it helps me to adjust my personality drives a little bit in a healthier way.
So step one was realizing that you can make these big changes.
Right.
Step two is looking at your data like objectively. And as far as the data, it's sleep quality, heart rate, recovery, or HRV, heart rate variability, steps per day. And what else do you track, if anything?
There's so much more in the Whoop. You know, you can track, you can personalize like drinking. You can personalize weed. You can track so your like behaviors. Just you can say like
macronutrients. Yeah.
Milk. Is milk good for my rest? Does it throw my recovery scores off? And you answer a journal every morning, personalize it, and it filters it through the algorithm, through the lens of your data to then give you some feedback if you track it long enough. So I get a client, go ahead.
No. So I just want to get a picture of your whole program, and then we can go more into the details.
Yeah.
So you're working on all these habits. It sounds like you're also tracking the relationships between food and recovery. So diet and macronutrients is probably a part of it. And then the other major elements are weight training, which I think hopefully you can talk a little bit about, self-massage, and is it fasting once a quarter, or how does, and am I missing anything?
I get clients to fast once a quarter. And one thing that I'm going to start experimenting with is Walter Longo's fasting mimicking diet to stretch it out to 5 days, because I have a fast metabolism. And not eating is very spiritual to me for all the beings on the planet that are suffering and going hungry. In solidarity, being hungry and not ingesting anything for 3 days puts me in touch with that energy and builds compassion. And it makes me like, because we grew up poor, I finish everything on my plate. I don't waste any food. I use all the vegetables in the house. I don't throw things away. It's just a reverence I have around that. So the fasting is a seasonal spiritual reboot. It's cleaning the taste buds of sugars that have snuck in. If caffeine has snuck in and it's been too much, it's just a reset to come back to center. It kills the senescent cells, like you mentioned earlier.
And you recommend people to do a 3-day water fast, or what is the fast that you recommend?
I always do 3-day water fast.
And then just while they're fasting, taking electrolytes, or no coffee, no nothing. Like, do you have any?
And lemon.
Salt and lemon. Yeah.
Yeah, sea salt and lemon.
And, it's interesting. I was thinking about this because I fast so much because I'm a bit of a fasting fanatic. And I guide a lot.
Do you feel like you come off center, or why do you do it so much?
I love the way I feel when I fast. I am a little extreme in this one respect. I like to fast and then I like to feast.
Do you eat junk food or no?
Just by the fact that I'm not answering that right away tells you I eat some junk food. It's the hardest thing. I think one of the hardest things for me with my diet is having children. And it's so weird that every healthy person I know, like yoga people, not all of them, but we still somehow default to parenting our kids with the food that we were like I ate so clean when I was a yogi in New York before we had kids. Oh my God, my diet was like so amazing. And then kids, it's really hard once they get a taste of the chemical crap that's out there. We really try to make them eat real food, and we make them eat real food for like breakfast and dinner. But lunch is often what they're having at school or snacks, And so when that stuff's in my house, that could be a challenge for me. And I haven't figured out how to be perfect or wonderful with that. But for me, it's way easier to just fast for 3 days to like feel totally cleaned out, or even 1 day. I very often do 24-hour fast. So it's almost like one meal a day. And it's not for weight loss. It's just for feeling so good. But I'm backing all that up. I was thinking about how I've done some extreme fasts, and I think that creates imbalance. A lot of our cultures, I was raised Jewish, and I was never we fast once a year on Yom Kippur, which is actually coming up, which is a 1-day dry fast, but no one ever did dry fast in my family. And there are actually in Judaism, like 7 different holidays where you would do a fast. And I'm sure in Indian culture, in the great, various Hindu traditions, there's a lot of fasting. Do you have any background or relationship with the culture of your birth? I don't even know whether you were raised with any religion or not. But is there anything where you're kind of seeing it in that way? Or do you think we should just bring it to a more modern way of looking at things?
No, I think the teachings of India are eternal. The modes of communication of those teachings might be outdated. Like, for example, tantric teachings, they don't have to be accurate. Okay? They're meant to create concentration, like mudra, direction of energy, focusing on a goddess or a god, directs your awareness towards a point. The point is to train the mind to go into a certain groove. So some people will be attracted to that, but the Dharma, the unifying force of Vedanta that connects all things, I think all tantric teachings will wind up when you're in concentration to the Vedantic realization. So I am heavily influenced by the teachings of Vedanta, but I can acknowledge like the teachings of Shankaracharya as shared, like this body negativity, this shunning of the body as a bag of pus. Like, what a horrible, rotting, decaying flesh. You're like, oh my God, that doesn't make sense today. But I get where he's coming from one's ultimate
Have you ever
perspective.
had that thought though?
Yes, I saw it.
Yeah.
My flesh was decaying. I had a disease that almost killed me.
It is, I think, a thought on the spiritual path. That
No.
Yeah.
It is, but it's not something you want to lay out in your Saturday 10 a.m. yoga class. Okay, but I've gone there, and it's true, but it's not something I would lay out for the beginner student of yoga, just trying to relieve back pain,
or even
weekend.
Even most students of yoga that aren't that serious about.
Yeah, but I contemplate my body as a bag of pus. I've seen it early at 39. It was rotting. It was decaying. My face was decaying. I had a disease called leishmaniasis. My flesh was rotting.
Wait, so you mentioned
it was serious. I had a preview of death.
You've had two major close calls, like the car accident that you were in from a dry fast.
I've used some of my 9 lives. I fell on a motorcycle in India sideways and skid 16 feet, burned my arm. It was the only day on a 21-day ride that I wore a helmet for some reason that saved my life. The car accident, and then this flesh-eating parasite that I took an experimental drug to save my life from.
How did that happen? How did you get the flesh-eating parasite? Do you know?
First, there's a point I want to cover about longevity. No. I want to make sure we have time. I want to be mindful of your time.
Scott hasn't sent me any pings. I checked every once in a while.
So the leishmaniasis, just to tie it into Vedanta, I went to the jungle to drink ayahuasca for a month in 2013. And while I was there, I got bit by an insect that carries the disease leishmaniasis. And when I came home, I had a zit on my shin. A month later, 2 months later, a zit showed up on my shin, and the zit grew in a perfect concentric circle till it got this big.
Like Lyme disease.
It became a hole of decaying pus and flesh and stench, and putrid, rotting flesh. Gross. And I was doing pranayama 8 months later, and the doctor said, I called him. I said, I have a nosebleed. He's like, let's send a biopsy to the CDC. And they got back. They're like, yeah, it's in your face now. They presented me with 2 drugs.
Wait, you didn't go there when you had a 2-inch zit on your ankle?
Yeah, I did. They were trying to solve the problem.
Oh, they'd been working on it for a while.
They've been working on it for 9 months.
Oh my God.
The final life or death decision was Do you want the experimental drug that kills your liver but kills the disease? But the liver is durable, so it might repair itself. And I chose that drug. So
that was smart, because the liver, you can literally like chop the liver in half and it can regrow.
But I had 0 asana practice after that. I couldn't do one chaturanga.
It must have been really weak after that.
Yeah, the treatment was an infusion for 6 weeks of my blood every morning.
How many years ago was that?
I was 39, so exactly 10 years ago.
That's why you like fell off the map. Okay.
Yeah, I fell off for a little while there.
Wow. You're really lucky, though, that they saved
I was
your
really
life.
lucky.
Like, this is where we have to give pranams to Western medicine.
Oh, I surrendered to the doctors. I'm like, I will listen now that it's in my face. I am yours. So anyway, back to my longevity protocol. There's one more thing. We didn't get to when we talk about data, I'm going to put this in there, Viome, where you test your poop, your blood, and your saliva. You test all your materials to learn for $400 what's going on inside of you. AI gets to analyze it, tells you what your metabolic scores are, how your oral health is, what bacteria, what foods are right for you, what foods are not right for you. We're running out of time, so I don't want to get too deep.
That's a great deal, though. $400.
That's another way to collect data. So biometric device, but also testing your poop to see what your poop says. Your poop is loaded with information about what you could do to improve your health. But so I know Scott's going to chime in at any moment.
Let's kind of end with the end of your program.
Okay,
and we'll have to just have you on again.
We'll talk about more of the protocols later and step by step. So back to the idea of when you're working with someone, you work holistically. I start guessing so I can frame what someone's personality is like and how they're wired. Like my clients, most of them, and they come referring through a network, are type A, masters of the universe. So they're already ready for hardcore stuff. So we go right into fully loaded programs. If someone else is more gentle and middle way and they don't want to give up drinking, they want to keep drinking, I don't push them against that. I help them to drink less. So there is a part of my program, the psychological part, where it's just framed as do hard stuff every now and then. Whether it's a dry fast, whether it's a run per week, whether it's cold showers, don't let the body tell you when it wants sex, when it wants food, and exactly when it wants sleep all the time. Don't let your desires push you around. Let your will also exert itself. Like Andrew, I run once or twice a week. I have a long history of running. To this day,
you hate running.
I hate the fucking start of a run.
I know it.
I can't stand the idea of putting on a whole running outfit in the winter, lacing up, putting on a hat. But when it's done, boy, do I feel amazing. But I never like the beginning. But my mind tries to psych me out every time. And I love that moment when I turn on my watch and I hit start. And I know there's only way there's going to be, I'm up against Jai. Jai has to finish this for the sake of Jai. Because you know what? Maybe Jai is going to get another freaking disease called cancer that he has to beat. My client, one of my clients just got colon cancer. It's early stages. He can beat it. But he didn't see that come. He does everything right. He eats, sleeps. His weight's perfect. He eats all the right foods for himself. And he still got colon cancer. This is hard. He's going to have to put up a fight. He didn't see it coming. Life has surprises for you. So you train ahead of time for those surprises, whether it's a cold shower, whether it's a seasonal fast, whether it's a long run once or twice a week. You know, you have to, if you're going to be on board with my program, you can't do everything you like to do. So for me, that is the part of standing naked for inspection before your own psyche is like, when I finish the run, I have, in a neurolinguistic programming type of way, I start to see myself as a closer. I can be there for my partner when she's suffering. When she's having a really hard time and she needs me to just listen, I'm going to be what she needs me to be, because it's not about weakness. It's about firmness in your backbone. So as a wisdom keeper, someone moving into the 50s in the second half of life, it would be incomplete to let my clients off the hook without sharing this one vital aspect. This is an inescapable truth and fact of life. Like, you can't run from this. There are things that are going to happen on your path that you didn't plan, that are not easy, and you have to train for that day. So some of the uncomfortable things, it varies from person to person. So that is part of the whole thing, of the longevity program.
I mean, it's awesome. I'm so pumped that you're going to be teaching all this at the festival. I also think you have more than reminded not just me, but anyone listening, why you absolutely should be teaching and being a spiritual teacher and leader in this new way. Like, that was the message I kept getting as I hear you talk about, when you talk about your own process and the own work that you're doing on yourself, that is what inspires people to do their own work. And that is the role of the teacher, is to be the lighthouse, to both show people a way they can go, and also to show a way that's possible that you yourself are on. So I'm really grateful for this conversation, Jai. And I can't believe Scott let us go for almost 2 hours. That means he really liked it, by the way, too. You won my producer and partner over.
I think we could go on. I was thinking at the festival
oh my God,
to get all the podcasters together and for them to talk about how their podcast has influenced their perspective. Like what Jay Brown did, but to get every one of us that has a podcast together.
That'd be cool.
To do something like that. That'd be fun.
All right. To be continued.
To be continued.
Jai, so any last things that you want to shout out, and we can, links and stuff, we can put anything you want to share before we go? If anyone wants to train with you, how do they find you?
I teach yoga for longevity digitally 3 times a week. It's 7 to 7:30 a.m. on Zoom from my studio, the Jai Yoga Shala in Germantown, New York. So people can learn about that at jaiyogashala.com. I offer a free week, so you just sign up and the links come to you to register, and you can get a taste of what I'm doing in terms of that class blends strength training, mobility, and neurological conditioning. So all the balance postures. I don't waste a second of it. And so that's something they can check out. And I'm pumped to be teaching at the festival to share more about program design. And I'm also going to be teaching about how yoga can help us in a crisis. I think COVID was one crisis, but we have to be ready for any other possibilities. So utilizing the practice to create peace and spreading peace and being the lighthouse, as you said, and a vibration of peace. Some people, even in the most darkest of times, remain peaceful. So this practice can do that. And I want to share how it can be utilized for stress. So I'm pumped, man. I'm so psyched to be going to the festival you've organized. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Jai Sugrim. Peace, brother.
Peace, Andrew.